And welcome back. In this tutorial I'm going to do a continuation in how you can use the Widget text widget and how you can use absolute positioning using the Widget library. Now, a disclaimer, this tutorial is not a full tutorial on how to do cascading style sheets or why you would use absolute positioning, but it is just a tutorial on how to accomplish absolute positioning using the Widget library itself. So let's go ahead and get started. As you can see here, I have a Komodo Edit project, and it's just called positioning. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you two methods and how you can use absolute positioning with Widget. The first method is going to be called set positioning scheme, or set position scheme, and set margin, and those are part of the widget class that you can use to position widgets. And it can be used not just for widget text, but as you can see, we can use it for a label, we can use it for a line edit, a widget line edit, a widget push button, but this is going to be a continuation of the widget text. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'll minimize this, and I'm going to show you the kinds of positioning schemes that are available in the Widget library. Now, if you do a search for either static, relative, absolute, or fixed, you should get these results. And if you just click on the results in the documentation, this is the Widget documentation, you'll see you have 4 choices. And we're going to use the absolute position scheme. Now, the first thing I'm going to do in the project is I'm going to get rid of our label, and let me get everything set up here. I'm going to delete this label. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do is get rid of this, and I'm going to create 2 boxes. First one's going to be a Widget text, and I'm going to call it box 1. I'm just going to give it a constructor and add it to our root widget. As you can see, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to give it a text of header 3, something we've been doing already. I'm just going to call it box 1. And then I'm going to create another box, and the reason I'm calling a box is because I'm going to actually put some styling to this so you can actually see what the widget looks like. And I'm going to call this box 2. Close up the tag. I'm also going to add it to our root widget. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set some styling. So what we need to do is add a couple of header files. Now, I haven't gone in depth on some of these because some of these will be their own mini tutorial, mini series, or mini tutorials. But I want you to actually see that you actually need these so you can see what a widget looks like with a border around it. So I'm going to add a Widget border that enables you to add a border around a widget. And I'm going to add the CSS decoration style. And that enables you to actually apply a limited amount of CSS around a widget. Now that we have these 2 classes and header files, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to call the decoration style object. Now, the decoration style object is actually a class of Widget CSS decoration style, and that class enables you to apply a limited amount of CSS styling. And actually, let's see, I didn't want to make this too long, but if I go ahead and go to the documentation and we do a search, I actually don't have to type out the entire thing. And as you can see, we have the CSS decoration style, and it's a style class for a single widget or a style sheet rule. So in our case, I'm going to apply something like this, a widget, and call the decoration style object and set some one property. I'm going to set the set border property, and this enables you to set a border around the widget. And of course, a different border style may be specified for each of the 4 sides. So we're just going to do it for each of the 4 sides so we can see what the boxes look like. So we're going to do box 1, decoration style, dot set border. And if we look at the constructor, we have a set border, and it takes a border object, and you can set the flag for top, bottom, left, or right. In this case, we're just going to leave it as is because it's optional. If we look at the border class and look at the constructors, you can have an empty constructor, or you can set a couple of arguments. And these are basically about the same when you're looking at the constructors. And this is a value class, so you don't have to create it dynamically. What we're going to do, we're going to pass in a style. We're going to give it a width, and we're going to give it a color. Now, these two are basically, if you look at style, what can you set the style to be? The style can be hidden, it can be none, dotted, dashed, solid, and some others. And as you can, and what we're going to do is make it solid because we need a solid border around our object. The width, we're going to make it, see, let's click on this. We're going to make it thick. So if you, it's an enumeration, so you would do witty border, and then you would actually put the actual enumeration. In our case, it's going to be thick. And the last argument for our witty border is going to be a color. And you can do this a ton of different ways. In our case, we're just going to do a color, a global color. You see, we can do actually the RGB, we can use a string name. We're going to use the global color as part of the witty library. And here's some of the values. In our case, we're going to use black, so you would just do witty and then the color. So if we go back to our code with everything that we know so far, just going to call witty border. You don't have to actually create an object. You could, but in this case, we're just going to call the constructor right here inside of the set border. So we have the witty border, and the argument that we need is witty border, and we said we're going to make it solid, so there's the first argument to our constructor. The second argument is going to be the border, and we're going to make it thick, and the color. And this is a value class that need to be created dynamically, and we're just going to pass in the color black, and then just close out our constructor. And that's how you create a border around a witty object or a widget. And that's what, actually, we're going to do the same thing for our second widget. Going to do a witty border and pass in the arguments for the constructor. Solid, witty border, it's going to be thick, and the color, this time we're going to make it red. So we have a black widget, or a widget with a black border and a widget with a red border. Now the next thing we're going to do, going to separate these out, is we're going to discuss the set position scheme and set margin. Set position scheme allows you to position your widget onto the root widget, and or on the parent widget. It can be the root widget, it can be another widget inside of this widget, or it can be the parent of this widget. Doesn't necessarily have to be root. And so what we're going to do, I'm going to focus here, set position scheme. And you saw earlier we had static, absolute, fixed. and we're going to use absolute. So that means now we can position this widget anywhere we want to on the page. It's not defined by the root widget. So now that we have the position scheme as being absolute, now we want to say, okay, where are we going to position this widget onto our screen? So we need a couple of coordinates. So the best method for that is to set the margin. And we're going to use set margin. So if we go back to the documentation, we go here, and we say set margin. Let's look up set margin. Click on this. Let's do the Witty widget, and it allows you to set CSS margins around the widget. So in our case, you have a combination. You can do the left side, the right. You can set the bottom or the top of the widget. In our case, we're going to do two of these. We're going to do the left. We're going to move it over a couple of pixels to the left and a couple of pixels to the right. So in this example, and I should look at the documentation again. If you look to see what it takes, set margin takes a Witty length, and you can pass in, here's the constructor. It can be a string, char, where you got a string, a char, and you can also do the actual value and the unit. In our case, we're going to use pixels. Here's the enumeration for the unit. Click on unit. You would just call Witty length and the actual unit itself. So if we go back here, we have Witty length, and what we're going to do is we're going to move it over 100 pixels to the left, and we're actually going to set the unit 2 pixels. So that moves the widget over 100 pixels to the left, and then we want to call this set margin. Excuse me. Set margin. Witty length, and we're going to set it another 100 pixels. This time, going to use pixel, and we're going to set 100 pixels down from the top. And actually, I forgot to do the actual left. Okay. So as you can see, we set the margin to be, we're going to move the widget 100 pixels to the left and 100 pixels from the top. So if we go ahead and just run this, I'm not going to do the second one quite yet. Let's go ahead and just compile this so you can see what it looks like on the browser. And remember, it's nothing but a widget. Get my browser window up. Okay, it's been compiled. Let's run the server. And if we go to localhost, okay, let's ignore box 2 because box 2 has not been set, but as you can see, it takes the top of the page. And because box 1 has been set with a position scheme of absolute, it does not follow the flow of the widgets that we have laid out. So we moved it from 100 pixels over to the left and 100 pixels down from the top using the set margin. So that means we can set widgets anywhere we want to on the page. So if we go back to our code, I'm going to turn the server off. And let's close this. Let's give us a little bit more room here. If we go to box 2, set position scheme, and notice when you looked at the example, notice how box 2 took up the entire page, but notice how box 1 did not, and we didn't even resize the widget. So if we set the position scheme, it is also going to be absolute, box 2, set margin, and in this case we're going to do not 100, we're going to do 150, and it's going to be pixel, and we're going to move it over to the left. And box 2, set margin. And it's also going to be 100 pixels down from the top. And as you can see, we have 150 pixels from the left and 100 pixels from the top. The set position scheme has been set to absolute. So let's go ahead and compile this. Alright, let's run the application. Server is up and running, and we do a refresh. And as you can see, box 2 has been resized. And notice how 100 pixels from the top, 150 pixels from the left. And notice how box 2 overlaps box 1. Now to show one more example, using the same 2 boxes, let's just move it over to 200. And let's compile. I'm going to turn the server off. Let's run the application. And as you can see, we have box 1 and box 2. And all we did was move it over using set margin over 50 more pixels. And as you can see, you can use absolute positioning to position your widgets anywhere you so desire. Again, it's up to you as the programmer and the developer to use absolute positioning any way you choose. But this is just showing you how it is implemented in Widget. So I will see you in the next tutorial. Bye-bye.